God promised Abraham a people, a land, and blessing, so that through them God might restore blessing to all nations and to the whole creation. The Pentateuch tells us how God forms Israel into a nation. And now, as they cross the Jordan, God gives them the land he promised Abraham as a public stage on which to exhibit his creational design in view of the nations. Israel's life on the land is to be a picture of what God intended for creation, a picture of Eden restored, a picture of the coming new creation. The story of Israel's life on the land is told in the historical books and focused through the lens of the covenant pictured in this diagram. If Israel will live according to the law, they will experience the blessings promised in it. If, however, they break the covenant by disobeying the law, they will know the curses until they are exiled from the land. In the years that follow, Israel fails in its vocation, breaks the covenant, disobeys the law, experiences the covenant curses, and is finally exiled. But the story begins with hope, with a story told in the book of Joshua. Joshua succeeds Moses to lead Israel into the land of promise. Yet what is clear is that it is really Yahweh who is the hero of Joshua's story. It is He, God, who leads Israel into the land by holding back the waters of the Jordan so they can cross. It is Yahweh who gives them the land, as is clear, for example, in the Battle of Jericho, where He brings down the walls with no military action from Israel. It is Yahweh who divides the land by lot among the tribes. Thus, it is God alone who keeps the promise He had made to the patriarchs. Toward the end of Joshua, we hear this summary. And so the Lord gave Israel all the land He had sworn to give their ancestors, and they took possession of it and settled there. Not one of the Lord's good promises to the house of Israel failed. Every one was fulfilled. The book closes with a covenant renewal ceremony at Shechem, in which Joshua challenges Israel to obey the law, to reject the dangerous idolatry of the nations, to hold fast to the Lord, to serve and love Him alone. Their immediate task is to bring God's judgment and purge idolatry from the land, so that the land might be a picture of the new creation. Israel accepts this challenge, responding 3 times to Joshua, "We will serve the Lord." But we see in the book of Judges, their life in the land begins badly. Israel's covenant failure appears quickly as they fail to drive out the idolatrous nations. So the Lord comes to Israel, accusing them of breaking the covenant. His sentence on them is, ironically, to give them over to what they want, a life amidst the nations and their gods. This sentence will be carried out in cycles, as we see in this diagram, in which repeatedly Israel will fall prey to the foreign gods and arouse God's anger. He will give them into the hands of the pagan nations, and in their distress, Israel will cry out to God for help, and He will answer by sending a deliverer. For a short time, Israel will again experience rest until the whole sorry cycle inevitably begins again. The book of Judges narrates 6 of these cycles, each featuring a new deliverer. 2 of the best known are Gideon and Samson. These deliverers save Israel from their oppression under pagan idolatry for a season. But each cycle is worse than the last, and as Israel spirals ever deeper into rebellion. 2 appalling stories conclude the book to illustrate just how far Israel has fallen. The first is a story of idolatry, and the second a story of rape, which leads to civil war. Far from being a distinctive people, Israel manifests the very worst of pagan idolatry. They reject the Lord and His law, doing what is right in their own eyes. Israel is in desperate need of a better deliverer to liberate them from this mess. The cry that concludes the book of Judges is for a king to mediate God's rule. In those days, Israel had no king. Everyone did as they saw fit. And in the book that follows, God will give them one. But can a king deliver them from the rebellious idolatry of their hearts that constantly lead them to follow after other gods? Will a king finally deal with sin and allow Israel to become the nucleus of the new true humanity that will inherit God's renewed creation?